Choosing the right structure. This workshop is designed to guide you through the key considerations for starting a not-for-profit organisation. We'll begin by exploring 9 essential questions that will help you to define your purpose, audience, activities and funding approach. Then we'll look at startup guides for the 3 most common not-for-profit structures and how to choose the right one for you. There's also a downloadable PDF guide to support you. Finally, we'll work through some real scenarios to reflect on how these ideas might apply to your own plans. For more detailed guidance and a summary of more not-for-profit structures, use the link below to access my free course and workbook. First, if you're thinking about setting up a not-for-profit organisation or supporting someone who is, consider the following questions. What need have you identified? Is this just an idea, or can you actually prove that people want and need this? Who do you want to help and why? Be really clear about your audience. Move from thinking we want to support everybody to being able to define a specific group of people with particular needs that you can support. What will you deliver? Exactly what type of projects or services do you plan to develop and offer? What do you plan to achieve? So even from the outset, think about your long-term impact. If this idea succeeds, what would that look like in 5 to 10 years' time? Who will be involved and how? So start thinking about the trustees, directors or volunteers that you'll need around you to support you as your idea grows. Are you formalizing an existing group or starting from scratch? So often I help people change from one structure to another. So be clear on whether this is a new venture, whether it's a step up from a test or a pilot project, or is it a response to something that's not working in your community? And how will you fund your work? I advise people to think about this very, very early on. So have you considered where your funding will come from? What's your estimated annual income? Do you have a sense of how much it's going to cost you to deliver what you're planning to deliver? Will this be voluntary or paid work for you? It's really important to know again from the start, are you thinking of this as a side project or a full-time role? And do you have the time and the financial support for whichever option you choose? So here I'm going to go through the key aspects to 3 of the most popular not-for-profit structures: the unincorporated association, a charitable incorporated organisation, and a community interest company. So first of all, what is it? Well, an unincorporated association provides a simple and effective structure for a group of people to come together for the purpose of delivering a project or service in their community. An unincorporated association is more commonly referred to as a community group, a grassroots group, or a voluntary group. A charitable incorporated organisation, known as a CIO, is a type of registered charity, and there are 2 types of CIOs. The foundation model is run by a small group of appointed trustees and doesn't have any voting members. The association model is a wider membership organisation with voting members. A community interest company is a company limited by guarantee, meaning that unlike a company limited by shares, it doesn't and can't distribute income to its shareholders. This allows it to be described as a not-for-profit, meaning that all surplus income is reinvested back into the organisation. A CIC is a business that has a clear social or environmental aim, which operates as a social enterprise by committing to use its assets and profits for the benefits of its community of interest. So who is involved with each of these? Well, an unincorporated association ideally has 3 unrelated people to start the group and sign the agreement stating its objectives. The volunteers who set up and run the group become the voting members. The Charity Commission will expect a CIO to have a minimum of 2 unrelated trustees, but it's good practice to start with at least 3. Trustees have overall responsibility for how the charity operates and the decisions it takes. I've added a link to more information about the responsibilities of trustees if you want to read that. If you're using the association model, you'll also open up the charity to a wider membership. So these are people who can vote on important decisions and have a say in how the charity is run. A company limited by guarantee is incorporated and has voting members. It's controlled by a group of directors who can be either paid or unpaid. Although an individual can set up a CIC, if you plan to apply for any grants, you'll need a minimum of 2 unrelated directors. Next, how will each of these structures be funded? Well, an unincorporated association will be funded through donations or contributions from its members or beneficiaries. For example, you can ask people attending a session for a small contribution towards room hire and refreshments, and it could be funded through grants. So although many funders will only fund registered charities, there are opportunities for smaller unincorporated groups to apply for grants to fund their projects and services. The primary source of funding for a CIO will be through grants and donations. Larger and long-standing CIOs may also receive income from their investments, or they might set up a separate training subsidiary, for example, to open a shop and sell merchandise. A CIC will generate its income from a combination of sales, such as products and services, and grants. While there are a lot of funders that will only consider applications from registered charities, there are an increasing number of funders that will also consider supporting CICs. A CIC will not usually ask for public donations because, although it is a not-for-profit, it's not legally charitable. And remember that a CIC reinvests its profits back into the community it was set up to serve. So is this the right structure for you? Well, here are a few things to think about. An unincorporated association is not seen as a legal entity. Therefore, its individual members are legally responsible for the organisation and its finances. For community groups run by volunteers doing something to benefit either themselves or their local community, with no plans to employ staff or lease premises, an unincorporated association is the simplest option and often the best place to start. You don't even need to register an unincorporated association at the beginning, and it doesn't cost anything to set one up. But once your income reaches £5,000 per year, you must then register it with the Charity Commission. A CIO can purchase property, employ staff and enter into contracts, but it can't pay its trustees. A CIO must fundraise for and use its income to advance its charitable objectives. As an incorporated organisation, a CIO is seen as a separate legal entity, meaning that the trustees have limited liability. A CIO must be charitable, and to meet these government guidelines, it must have a charitable purpose by meeting one of the 13 descriptions or more in the Charities Act. There's a full list of those in the workbook in the link below, and it must be for the public benefit. So this means its purpose must be beneficial to the public in general or a sufficient section of the public. The CIC is a hybrid business model, offering a flexible way to deliver on your mission or social aim. However, as a company, you'll be responsible for paying corporation tax and once over the threshold, charging VAT on your goods and services. Whilst you can be an employee or a paid director of a CIC, due to the asset lock, which means any remaining income or resources are transferred to another organisation with a similar social aim if the CIC is dissolved, you can't sell a CIC like you can other types of private companies. So let's look at the first steps for starting up one of these organisations. With an unincorporated association, appoint the founding members, who's going to start and run your group and what will their roles and responsibilities be. Write a simple constitution to agree on the name and main objectives for your group. You don't have to submit this anywhere at the beginning, but it is important to have one. I've linked to a template that you can use. For a CIO, choose between the association or foundation model, then use the relevant Charity Commission Constitution template to write yours. Submit an application to the Charity Commission. I've linked to the application form below. The online form will guide you through questions about your charity and its classification, what it will be set up to achieve, how it will do this, who it will help, and where it will operate. For a CIC, Prepare your governing document, so choose a name for your CIC, use the model templates to create a memorandum of association and articles of association, complete a form CIC 36, which you can use to describe your activities and how they'll benefit your community. That will need to be signed by all of your directors, and then submit that application to the CIC regulator. With all of these structures, the next steps after the registration process is to open a bank account and prepare a simple business plan. And if you're struggling to decide between these structures and work out which one is right for you, here are my top tips. You can fundraise as an unincorporated association, but remember that you can't claim to be a charity if you don't have a registered charity number. So be very clear and transparent in explaining to both individuals and funders what the purpose of your group is and exactly how any money will be spent. If you're looking to register a CIO, allow plenty of time for your application to the Charity Commission. A lot of applications get rejected on the first attempt, but if that happens, you will get feedback on the reason why, which you can then work on and resubmit. With a CIC, the best advice I can give is to start out by thinking of your CIC as a business that needs to bring in more income than it spends. Rather than relying on small and short-term grants, create a realistic and diverse income generation plan, prioritizing income from charging for your goods and services. This is more likely to lead to an enjoyable and sustainable way of delivering on your aim. Now let's have a look at some real scenarios. These scenarios have no right or wrong answers. As you read through each example, think about how the situation applies to your own idea. It can be helpful to turn it around. If someone were to pitch this idea to you, wanting advice on which structure would be the best fit, what questions would you ask them and what advice would you give? I suggest you pause after each scenario to note down your ideas and then play to hear my questions and thoughts for each one. Example 1. I own 5 Shetland ponies that I take into schools and care homes. My income comes from the horse riding lessons I run and renting out stables to other horse owners. I've never charged for the visits, but people have started to ask if they can make a donation, and with the cost of food and utilities increasing so much, I need a way to cover the cost of these visits. My questions to consider here would be, is it charitable? Would this actually fall under one of the definitions of being charitable from the Charity Commission? What do the children and elderly people get out of it? What are the outcomes of this work? How would it work with the existing business? Would they remain completely separate, or is this person wanting to merge the two? And if it were to become a CIC, can a CIC accept donations like they're wanting to? Well, as I previously mentioned, that's not normal practice, so that might be something to consider. Example 2. I'd like to run some free information sessions for young single mums on nutrition and exercise. I've spoken to the owner of a local cricket club who says I can use their room for free if we pay for tea and coffee. I would volunteer my own time to run this and would need another 2 volunteers to help on the day. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to organise this as an individual or how to cover the cost of refreshments and printed booklets. My first question here would be, how do you know this is needed? Has anyone asked for this? Do you know that you'd get people turning up on the day? Is this a one-off or a trial for a bigger project? And reminding people to think of things like, if they're running a public event, do they need insurance to cover that, or are they covered already by the venue? Example 3. When my brother died, we received a lot of donations via GoFundMe, supporting us as a family to organise the funeral and create a legacy for him. We want to use our story to educate people on the risks of solvent abuse, and we have a lot of supporters already, wanting to run marathons and other events to raise money for us, but we're unsure of the best way to do this. My questions here would be, what do they actually want to deliver? Think about the projects and services. Do they actually want to be a service delivery charity, or do they want to be a fundraising charity for a particular cause? Do they want to use the money for their own campaigns, or do they want to donate it to other families or charities? And importantly, have they got the time, resources and trustees to turn this into a charity? I'd love to know what your feedback would be on these examples, so put your comments below. And thank you for watching this workshop. I hope it's given you the clarity and confidence to take the next steps with your not-for-profit idea. For more detailed guidance, including an overview of additional structures and a comprehensive workbook, don't forget to explore my free online course using the link below.